Welcome to our podcast, Raising Bigs. This podcast is an ongoing conversation between myself and my young adult son. We're ready and willing to talk about all the things families might experience in their lives and relationships, both as parents and young adults, from teens to 20-somethings. The good, the bad, and the sometimes ugly. In this episode, we're discussing the fun topic of trips and travel. We'll touch on family trips and vacations. And yes, they're different. The freedom, growth, and memories we find in traveling as both parents and young adults together and also solo. I'm Marcy and I'm the mom.
I'm Kate and I'm her kid. Growing up, we were not the family that had, big Disney visits or crazy, super extravagant vacations like cruises or things like that. But we did spend a lot of time traveling as a family and making memories along the way of our vacations over the years throughout our childhood. We are not definitely experts when it comes to traveling, travel advisors. We can't answer all the questions, but we can just speak from our experience and encourage you to do what works best for you and your family. We're simply here to share our experiences, what we learned from them, what we would do differently, what we would do again, in hopes of, maybe getting you guys to spark a few new ideas if you're thinking of any travel plans coming up. With that being said, Mom, how did you decide when, where we were going as a family, what we were going to do, what time we were going to go, all of that? What did that look like as a parent?
Right. So first, let's talk about the difference between trips and vacations, because as a mom, it looks very different whether I was planning a trip or planning a vacation. So if we were going to like a family reunion or a big sightseeing place, like for instance, if a family is going to Washington, D.C. and they're spending all their time going from monument to monument, that doesn't sound like a vacation to me as a mom. That sounds like a trip. Both are valid, both are good, but I actually prefer vacations. If I'm leaving, I want it to be relaxing. But I know there are a lot of people who love seeing historical things. My husband is one of those. And so we try to strike a balance when we go. But when I had littles, when you guys were little, it was really just a chance for us to take some time to unplug from real life and to get to spend time as a family without all the distractions of school, work, extracurricular activities, chores, all of the things that go into regular life with your family. So when we lived in Minnesota and you guys were little, a lot of times we went to the lake. And so sometimes that looked like we would rent a condo at a lake, Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, right? We took advantage of quite a few of them. And we also had very generous aunt and uncle who owned a cabin on a lake in northern Wisconsin. And we went there very often and got to play with all their fun toys and create a lot of memories as a family, not only our immediate family, but also with extended family. Kate, I know you've got lots of really fun memories of you and your cousins at the cabin. So sometimes we did staycations at home. And so it was easier to not have to pack up and travel with you guys and stay in a hotel and negotiate all of that. So sometimes we would just stay at home and take advantage of some of the fun things in the Twin Cities that there were to do. Go to the Mall of America, to the amusement park that was inside there, go to movies, maybe, cook out some special things at home that were fun, take walks, check out new parks, all of those kinds of things. What do you remember, Cade, from when we were little, when you were little, like not talking high school, because we'll talk about that in a minute,
Yeah.
but what do you remember about when you were little, where we would go?
Like you said, trips up to, my great aunt and uncle's cabin, different staycations, things like that. I remember we would have some weekends where it was kind of just like, okay, we're going to maybe order in pizza and watch a movie on this night. And then Saturday, we're going to wake up and go to the zoo. And then it was kind of, even though it wasn't, we were going somewhere, it was still a vacation, still something different than just our normal. Like I said, I remember going to the lake a lot. As a young kid, I don't really ever remember us taking any big vacations. Maybe we did, and I don't remember them, but I think most of them were like smaller vacations or closer to home and things like that, which, when you have three little kids, that's a lot to pack up and drive 10 hours or get on a plane or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that definitely makes sense. And I think that it's, like you said, important to recognize the difference between trips and vacation. Vacation is a little more relaxing, a little more chill. I personally am more of a fan of a trip than you are. I know you're more of vacation. You like to chill. I like to go and do things and see things. But they're both needed, and I think it's important, especially when you're going with family, to kind of find a balance. Just growing up in our family, I know that not all of us wanted to just sit around all day, but also some of us didn't want to, go run around and do activity to activity. So I think that is really important to recognize that difference for sure.
Yeah, finding the balance for sure. And then when you guys were 10, one of the things I did, and I would encourage every parent, not just moms, but also dads, to take each of their kids on a trip by themselves. We did something called a trip at 10. And so Cade and each of his siblings got to help give feedback what type of trip they would like to take. Cade's big brother, he wanted to take an airplane. That was all he cared, was that he got to take an airplane. So we flew from Minneapolis to Chicago and stayed downtown. And in one day, he got to do an airplane and the subway and the city bus and a taxi. And you would have thought I had given that child the moon. And it's fairly cheap, right, to fly from Minneapolis to Chicago. There's flights leaving on the hour every hour. And so we created memories there. His sister, we had just moved to Kansas. And when she was 10, she wanted to be a pampered princess pretty much. And we went to Kansas City for the weekend. And she and I stayed in a big Embassy Suites hotel that has a huge courtyard that you overlook. And they had, right, a big breakfast, which is her favorite meal, right? It was a big breakfast food. And she wanted her toes done and wanted to get room service in the room and watch a movie in the room. That was we did other things, right? But that's what she wanted to do. Hey, tell everybody what you wanted to do for your trip at 10.
So we went to Branson, Missouri. Again, we lived in Kansas at the time, so it's like a 5-ish hour drive, I want to say. And I wanted to go there because there was a restaurant called Lambert's that would throw bread rolls at you while you ate dinner. They throw them across the dining room, which I just thought was so cool and so fun. So that was one of the big reasons why we went. But we also went there. The main reason was to go to the Chinese circus that was there. I want to say, I forget what, there was a certain theme that it was while we were there. But that was, the big thing that we did there. We also went to the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum, went to, a whole bunch of different things, had some different sightseeing to do. So that was, kind of what my trip at 10 was, which I think kind of like you said in describing them, it's cool to see how different each of us kids were and what we wanted to do and where we went. I don't really think any of us went to the same place or did the same things or anything like that. So it just goes to show, like I said earlier, everyone in the family is looking for something different and not everyone wants to do the same thing.
Yeah, and very customized, like you were taking Mandarin Chinese in school. And so that was part of your allure, right, for the Chinese circus. You also, when you found out they had a Krispy Kreme, wanted to make sure we went there for breakfast every day. So everybody had their favorite part. With all three of my kids, usually there had to be a pool involved, no matter where we were going. Like I've got 3 fish. I love the ocean, but they will take any body of water anytime. So but I did those trips with my kids and they wouldn't necessarily have to be at 10. You can do them anytime. But I think it's really important to spend that one-on-one time with your kids. And if you do it in the context of travel, right, you get to discover some new things together and make memories that only the two of you get to share. So, even if it's driving to the next town over, and doing something special with your kids, make those memories. When the kids got older, I decided that we really wanted to do a little something bigger to celebrate their graduations. It's very, very common here in Kansas for there to be a family trip the year that you have a senior. That's a pretty big thing. So we actually checked out some different beaches along the Gulf Coast and did that with the kids. And they did everything from like laying on the beach, buried in the sand like a sea turtle, to parasailing over the ocean. Cade and my favorite was our horseback ride in Galveston, which I will never forget, or not Galveston, South Padre, which I will never forget. But I think we made some really great memories on those trips. Now, those were a little more expensive, but when we talk a little bit later in the podcast about ways to make it more affordable for your family, I'll kind of share some of the things we did there. But anything big you remember about those, what I will call higher dollar, higher impact trips that we went on when you were older?
I would just say, I think one thing that I think about just as far as the financial side of it is considered, which again, we'll get a little deeper into later on, but I think it's important to recognize, if you have the money to, great, but your 4-year-old isn't going to necessarily remember all the big fancy vacations that you go on. So I think, if money is a concern, it might be a better choice to take those smaller vacations or staycations while they're young. And like you said, by the time we took those bigger trips, those were for high school graduations. We were all a little more old enough to enjoy it, just laying on the beach, swimming in the ocean with my siblings for hours. Like you said, one of my favorite memories is me and you going horseback riding in South Padre. And I just me and my siblings, every time we get together, we talk about a story from one of those trips, no matter what it is, whether it was something funny that happened or sad that happened, or we were annoyed with each other or whatever. I think that it kind of just gives you that time to unplug from your daily life, get out of your normal routine and just kind of enjoy family time together and be out of your normal space, be out of the house and just get to enjoy time together for sure.
Mhm. And I love that you guys talk about those memories because, not every family has the financial capacity to take big, huge,
Hmm.
extravagant trips. For those families who have that, that's great. And they're providing their kids with an experience that maybe some of the rest of us don't have the opportunity to provide our kids. But that doesn't mean that you guys experience vacation with any less joy
Hmm.
or have memories that are any less valuable, right, than people who got
Hmm.
to take those big, huge, huge vacations. So, why do you
Exactly.
think it's so important for families to unplug like that and to have those memories to look back
Hmm.
on?
Like you said, I think that especially in the age, that a lot of kids are growing up in now, you go to school after summer break or after winter
Mhm.
break. And, there's always the kids, like you said, their parents can't afford to take them on nice trips financially. So they're, coming back talking about their trip to the Cayman Islands or wherever they end
Mhm.
up going. And that's great. It's really all just about what you can provide for you and your family. It's not a bad thing to be able to take them on a nice trip. And it's also not a bad thing to not be able to take them on a trip.
Mhm.
But I think that it's important as a family to unplug no matter what that looks like, whether it is a trip to the
Mhm.
Cayman Islands or a trip to Africa, or if it's just a trip to, like you said, a town that's 100 miles away and you just, go try a new restaurant and come back home that
Mhm.
same day and, make a little day trip. Whatever it is, I think that it's important just to unplug, have that time as a family, because it just really, I think, allows you to reset and,
Mhm.
take away the distraction of school and work and cooking dinner every night at home. It sets you outside of that normal routine. And I think it allows you to just reconnect as a family, especially when you have multiple kids in different ages. I know there were times growing up with my older siblings, when Sawyer is a senior in high school, I want to say in seventh or eighth grade, there's
Mhm.
not really much that we have in common on the daily basis. When he's doing his calculus homework and I'm learning, multiplication, that's not, we don't really have things like that in common. So I think that it kind of forces you to reconnect, spend time with each other without all the extra distractions. But as a parent, why did you, because, we weren't necessarily the best off financially, but you still
Mhm.
prioritize, family vacations and things like that. Why was that such a priority to you? And why did you think that that was important?
Yeah. For me, I think we don't remember a lot of the day to day. When you think back about your childhood, like you don't have a lot of solid concrete memories about, you might know that you spent a lot of time in the car running your brother and sister to their activities, but like there's
Hmm.
not a lot of like joyous things to look back on and to talk. You're not going to say, hey, remember all those hours I spent in the car driving you around? Like that's not a topic
Yeah.
that you and your siblings are going to bring up. You might say, yeah, I remember the fabulous meals mom made me, but you're not going to
Hmm.
say, remember that one time she did X, where we are going to talk about the one time we were at the beach and we had that waitress that we gave the ginormous tip to because we wanted to make her day. Like those are things that you do remember. So, again, for me, just that unplugging, taking us out of our normal routines. Even if it was a staycation, we had a lot of really good, we would take a whole week off when we didn't need to travel to see family.
Hmm.
Now, once we moved, out of state, right? And we had a 9 hour, 15-minute drive to go back to Minnesota to see our family. That was a lot of our time off. And I
Hmm.
think, you do have memories about then staying with your grandparents or your grandparents coming or, your aunt,
Hmm.
the kids coming and that kind of thing, the back and forth. We made some memories that way. But a lot of our vacation time was taken up with going to see family because that was more important,
Hmm.
to us. But again, it's about that unplugging, about getting out of your normal routine because it's so easy to just get in that churn and burn of daily
Hmm.
life. And if you don't make it a priority to sit down and look at your calendar and figure out, well, okay, when can our family be the priority, right? Spending time
Hmm.
together as a family. Because especially as kids get older, like they're all off doing their own thing and in their own directions. And sometimes it's nearly impossible to find a time where everybody can get away. But it was important enough to me that we found that time. And sometimes it meant we missed, and I even travel was important for me as a mom. Like I needed time to unplug from being a
Hmm.
mom. And so I took girls trips sometimes. And it was important for me to make those memories with my friends, but also for me to just not have to worry about anybody else's well-being for a few nights, to not worry about who needed to be fed and who was going to need the birthday party. Now, was it a
Hmm.
lot of work to get ready to go on those trips? Yes, but was it worth all of that to just come back refreshed? Hopefully you felt I was a little calmer when I came back
Yes.
home, a little more level. because it gets kind of crazy when your kids are off doing things, and it's really busy. So that's why it was important to me. I think the trips we did take, you and your brother and sister all like to travel. Like, I don't think
Hmm.
that's an accident, right? Like, traveling was something we did together. And I think you can talk a little bit about your shared love of travel and why you
Hmm.
feel like maybe you love it so much. What was it that inspired you to want to do more of it? So where'd that come from, do you think? I know where mine
Yeah.
came from, but
I honestly think mine came from just the vacations we took as a kid and how you prioritized it. You know, just really trying to make the most of the vacation, whether it was, there were a couple nights we had to eat fast food or learning, to go to the grocery store and cook some meals at home on vacation. There's definitely ways to cut back the expense of vacation, and you made it a priority. So I think that that is where it kind of comes from me. Obviously, it's great to be able to see the world and travel around, and I love doing it. And also, even being able to then share those experiences with you, go to places that you've been to, either before you had us or while we were younger or whatever, and me and you be able to have that connection and share that. And same with me, I've gone places where you haven't been before and being able to tell you about that. And not even just with you, I think that it can help you connect with so many people. You meet people on vacation that you would have never met before, even if it's just, a quick conversation with the waiter or the waitress or
mm-hmm.
the barista at the coffee shop or, the neighbor next door to your Airbnb. It's not necessarily a relationship that you're going to, text them every day and, create a friendship, but you just meet these people on vacation that you wouldn't normally meet. So it grows connections that way, but it's also great to grow connections with your family and your friends, to be able to, like I said, if you and your friend have both gone somewhere, be able to talk about it and have that connection. Or, you love to go to the beach. So when friends are like, oh, what beach should I go to? You have a lot of recommendations. So I think my love for travel has really just came from being able to, it's just another way that you can level up your relationships and share an experience with people. So that I think is where it comes from for me. Where would you say yours comes from?
Yeah, I love just immersing myself in a new environment. So whether that's a new city or a small town, I love trying new foods. I love finding new activities to do. I love seeing how nature is different, everywhere I go. I love meeting all of the different people. Like, having grown up in the Midwest and pretty much stayed in the Midwest for,
Hmm.
all of my existence as far as where I live,
Hmm.
I've really kind of reached out a lot and tried to, like, I've been both coasts. I've been to Mexico. I would love to go to Australia. I have things on my list in South America. I've got things on my list in Europe, and as I have more time, as I get older, I'm hoping I'm able to pull some of that off. I couldn't just drop everything when I had 3 kids and go stay in
Hmm.
Italy for 3 weeks, which I would love to do. But like you said, I do have a love of the beach, but I love visiting different beach towns. They all have their own flavor. They all have their own vibe and thing going on. And I just love being part of that, to go into new shops and walk around and meet new people and hear like different words they use for things even is
Hmm.
really fun. And I think it helps you to understand humanity better. And I happen to think it makes you a better human being and a lot more accepting of people of all walks of life. And
Hmm.
you are outside of your comfort zone. And sometimes you have to figure things out. Sometimes you have to rely on people you've never met before for things. And so I think that's what I love about it, is just that it is a challenge. It is something new and different every time. You hope things are going to go off without a hitch, but there's always a hitch somewhere,
Hmm.
especially if you're flying or renting a car or renting a VRBO. Like, there's
Hmm.
a lot of times there's little things you have to figure out on the fly, and I think it just makes you a better human all around. And
Hmm.
that's, I know there might be people who don't agree with that, but I don't want to live in a place of comfort all the time. I just don't believe you can have comfort without courage, right? Like, you need to be
Yes.
able to go and do those courageous things.
Hmm.
And I look back at what I've learned about myself mostly from traveling, and especially, like, I've done, a solo trip. Like, shortly after your dad and I got divorced, like, I went by myself to the beach, a beach I had never been to before,
Hmm.
a city I'd never been to before, and I was only gone, I think, but it was so interesting to me what I learned about myself, having to be like, oh, where am I going to go for dinner tonight? I'd really rather go out for lunch because at dinner time, it's all the couples and it's all the families, and I'm sitting here by myself and it just feels a little awkward. Not that it would stop me from doing it if I really wanted to go out, but
Hmm.
I just chose to get some things to eat at the condo, and which allowed me to then sit on the beach longer and watch the sunset, right? And
Yeah.
then just have a little nosh back at the at the VRBO and turn in for the night so I could get up and watch the sunrise. But I think I've grown as a human because of the travel I've done. I know I've met some
Hmm.
amazing people. I've done some women's retreats. That solo trip that I took, I actually ended up on the same beach, like 6 resorts down from another life coach from the same program that I had been in. We had never met. She saw my pictures on Facebook. She's like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Well, I am on Okaloosa Island. Where are you?" And she's like, "Well, I'm on Okaloosa Island." So
Hmm.
we actually got together for dinner and got to meet in real life, which was absolutely fantastic.
Hmm.
So, I think it's really something that if you haven't had a chance to do it and you're able to make it work, I do think from a personal growth
Yeah.
perspective, it's really valuable. How
I
would you say you've grown from the trips you've
I
taken?
was gonna say I agree with that too. Obviously, family trips, and then I've taken plenty of solo trips as well. And I think that, like you said, it is just a great opportunity to grow. It pushes you out of your comfort zone in more than one way. I personally am a fan of doing things alone. I will do anything by myself. I'll go out to eat by myself. I'll take a walk by myself. I'll go to the store by myself. I personally enjoy being in my own company. But I know for a lot of people that is a push for them. So I think that already is kind of placing you out of your comfort zone, having to travel by yourself. If you're the type of person who, if you either go on vacations with your friends or with your spouse or your kids or anything like that, or your parents, you might not be the person that has to keep track of all the boarding passes and keep
Mhm.
track of how long your layover is and all that stuff. So it might force you to be the person that needs to figure out, okay, I missed my layover. How do I get to point B now?
Mhm.
And things like that. So I think that it really just it challenges you, it pushes you, kind of like you said. But I think another thing for me personally, it's just it's let me know that there really is just so much out there in the world. I've gone on trips on both coasts, in the north part of the United States, south part of the United States, east, west. I've gone out of the country. I've gone by myself. I've gone with friends. I've gone with family. I've kind of done it in all different ways. And it really just shows you there's so much out there. There's so many different people to meet. There's so many different places to see. There's so many different restaurants to eat at. There's so many different cultures. There's just so much out there. And I think when you grow up and you either don't travel a lot, or you rarely travel, no matter what, whether it's because you don't want to, or you can't afford to, or you don't have the time off work, or you have kids or parents to take care of, or whatever. I think that it's so easy to get set into your scope of life that you can see right now. You drive the same streets every day, you see the same people every day. If you live in a small town, it might be the same person checking you out at Walmart every week. So I think that it just kind of forces you to see that there's so much out there. And again, I really want to push the importance that it doesn't need to be a big trip to Mexico or out the country, or you don't need to stay in a 5-star resort or
Mhm.
anything like that. Traveling just as much as getting in the car and driving 2 hours away for a day trip, you can still get the same experiences, still learn the same lessons, and still grow from experiences like that. It doesn't need to be on one extreme or the
Mhm.
other.
For
And
sure. And go ahead, honey.
yeah, no, you're good.
Okay. And like, now that you guys are all 20, all three of you are over 20, right? And living, two out of the three of you, you soon also living outside the house.
Hmm.
Like a lot of times it's everybody coming to me now, like
Yeah.
at Christmas, right? Your brother comes home from Washington and stays here, which is great. I go out there twice a year. Tim usually goes with me once to see him. You guys have all traveled to see him. But that again is like, now that you've been there multiple times, like you're starting to
Hmm.
feel more comfortable there. But it's because you've prioritized seeing family, which for a
Hmm.
lot of people, that's what they spend their travel time doing. But you also have prioritized adventurous travel, right? Things you haven't
Hmm.
done before. And you brought up a good point of if you're traveling with other people, whether that be friends or family, some people don't travel well with their family, or if they're doing
Hmm.
things like family reunions. And you know, I talk to people sometimes and I'm like, you do not sound excited to be going on this, what I would call a trip, right? If you're forcing
Uh-huh.
yourself to go do this thing, so you can check a box and say, well, I did go to the family reunion, even though I
Uh-huh.
really didn't want to, or I really don't travel well. And we can have a talk about boundaries and all of that that might help you to enjoy that better. But you've really made it a priority to get out there. And I've watched you like save your money. I've watched
Hmm.
you save your vacation time so that you're able to go with your BFF wherever you guys and your little wild hearts
Yeah.
desire, and
Hmm.
you know, take off and go to Aruba and do all kinds of crazy fun things. And I love watching that, you know, for you guys
Hmm.
and for, you know, Tim and I, now that we're older and don't have little kids to haul along, like that looks different as far as
Yeah.
where we're able to travel and what we want to do and how we want to spend our time. And a lot of our travel coming up is going to look like finding what beach location do we want to move to eventually. And so we might take other trips in the mix there, like for instance, you know, we took a lot of beach trips when you guys were little, but we did throw in a
Hmm.
Colorado mountain trip in November, right, over
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, just to push ourselves outside that zone. So that mix is what's fun. You know, it's fun to spend
Hmm.
some time seeing family
For
and
sure.
going to places that are comfortable, but it's also really fun to try out new things,
Hmm.
and make those a priority. So as a parent, sometimes it can be a little nerve wracking if you've got your, how old were you when you first traveled by yourself? When you went to Tampa, 19?
I was 19. Yeah.
Maybe 19 years old. And you're like, I'm going to fly to Tampa and check it out and see if I
Hmm.
might like to live there someday. And then I'm going to fly from Tampa out to Washington State to see my brother. And then I'm going to fly home. And I'm also going to rent a car. And I'm also going to get a VRBO all by myself.
Hmm.
Go to two places you'd never been. You had only flown a handful of times before that,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
right? And so as a parent, that can be kind of scary. I don't know if you felt scared on your side at all, what that looked like. But as a parent, I kind of was like, okay, you know, you were still living in my house. And I'm like, I'm obviously not going to stop you from going. You're an adult, right? You get to spend your money how you want to spend it. You get to spend your time how
Hmm.
you want to spend it. But please give me signs of life. And then we ran into issues when you were in Aruba where you didn't have cell phone service. And
Hmm.
so I didn't have your location. I didn't hear from you all the time every day. I had a Lonnie's
Hmm.
number. So if there was an emergency and I
Yeah.
needed to call her, I could do that. But I think I had to give up kind of that being worried about you in order to sleep at night, right? Like I
Yeah.
couldn't be worried that you're in a foreign country across the world, right? And I can't get to you in a
Hmm.
hurry if something happens. And so from a parent, I really had to do some work and some growth work
Hmm.
on that. And I didn't know where you were every day. I didn't know what your adventures were every day. You know, I would find out when I Facebook or
Yeah.
when you would finally get back and send me a text. But from your side, was there any fear
Hmm.
with any of your travels, like by yourself as a young 20 something? And what would you say to both parents and young adults who are
Yeah.
traveling for the first time for a lot of them?
Hmm. So, like you said before, so my trip to Tampa, it was kind of a joint trip between Tampa and then I went from Tampa to Washington and Washington back home. That was really the first time I had ever traveled by myself. I had flown on a plane maybe two or three times before that. Obviously, we had gone on like family vacations and stuff like that, but it was my first time flying by myself, first time getting an Airbnb, first time renting a car, um, first time being in a unknown place just by myself. So it's a lot, but me personally, I wasn't scared. Things like that though don't particularly scare me. I think that that is kind of out of the norm. I think most people would be scared. I even remember when I was telling my friends I was going, they'd be like, "Oh, aren't you like nervous to be by yourself?" I'm just like, "No." So I think that that is kind of more of an outlier situation. I think most people, probably are nervous for things like that. But I think the reason why I wasn't nervous is you really just have to kind of live in a state and in a mindset of it's all going to be okay and it's going to work out. And I kind of went into the trip knowing that there might be problems. You might get there and something's going to happen and you just have to be able to be on your feet and make changes based on whatever happens. So it wasn't scary for me. It was definitely something different, and it definitely took some adjusting to. Like I said, I enjoy being by myself, but it still was weird to just be able to say, okay, well, what do I want for dinner? And I just looked around, found a restaurant, and I went. I didn't have to say, oh, what does everyone else want, or what time does everyone else want to wake up tomorrow? I could wake up at 6 a.m. and go do something if I wanted to, or I could sleep until 11 a.m. So I think that it's not necessarily, I think if you look at it in a scary way, it's going to be scary. But if you look
Mm-hmm.
at it in just a sense of it's opening you up to a new opportunity and it's going to be something different and something fun. And again, kind of with the roadblocks things, when my best friend Alani and I had gone to Aruba, I didn't have any phone service. And it was just kind of one of those, okay, we tried to fix it. We were on the phone with our phone carrier company, couldn't figure it out. So I just kind of accepted it and said, okay, like this is just the way the trip is going, there's not much I can do about it, and you just have to power through. So I think that that's a good life lesson for everything, but
Mhm.
especially of traveling. If your flight gets pushed back and it causes you to miss your connecting flight, you can sit and be upset about it and be sad about it and be worried about it, or you can just do something about it. Or if
Mhm.
your rental car that you booked gets canceled the day before the trip, sometimes you just have to do something about it, or just accept what it is. Or if you wanted to go to this specific beach but it was closed for the day, or you
Mhm.
wanted to go on this hike but there was a snowstorm, so now the trail's closed. I think it's important just to understand that it's going to push you out of your comfort zone, but just to work through that and enjoy it as much as you can.
Well, and that sense of adventure, right? And that confidence building that you get, whether you're traveling by yourself or with other young friends,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the sense of accomplishment that you have after you get home from the trip and you know that you
Uh-huh.
navigated that by yourself, I think can be really confidence building
Uh-huh.
for sure. And
And I think,
the go ahead.
go ahead. I think for parents, sorry, I remembered you had asked me
Yeah.
that earlier. Like you said, I think it's hard, but you just kind of have to have that. You just have to give up the control and the worry. Obviously, yes, you're going to worry about them. You're going to want them to check
Mhm.
in and give you signs of life and all that. But you're not going to know exactly what they're doing every second of the day while they're there. And I try to check in, send you pictures, tell you, okay, like I'm going here to here
Mhm.
today, especially when I'm by myself. But you have to understand, like, okay, it's your little baby getting off into the real world by themselves. And yes, you can worry about it, but like you said, for your own sake, for your own
Mhm.
sanity, to be able to sleep at night, you just have to trust that whether they're 18, 19, 20, or 25 or 30 traveling alone for the first time, you just have to trust that however many years it's been, you've done the work to prepare them for it.
Right. And now you're going to have to remember that when I am a little old lady traveling by myself, coming to see you, and you're all worried
Uh-huh.
about me getting to you, right? Like the shoe will flip. But I just love that you've had the opportunity to have the adventures that you've had and that you've provided yourself with that, because I do think it has really helped to expand your horizons and expand your
Mhm.
thinking, as a young adult. So, talking about being able to afford trips, like, and when you want to go on trips, sometimes you have to plan them way
Mhm.
far out. Like some people they're working jobs, like have to plan for their vacation days. Sometimes you want to be able to say an impulse yes to a vacation. I know my husband and I just said an impulse yes to going and checking out one of the beaches that we want to check out over the 4th of July. And I don't know that I've ever decided to go on a trip in that short of a period of time, but we're just like,
Uh-huh.
hey, do you think we should go do this? Oh my gosh, look at this VRBO that I found. Oh, you really want to go? You want to go? And we just decided literally in the course of a couple of hours that we were going
Mhm.
to do this. And so sometimes it's the impulse, yes. Sometimes it's really planned for. Sometimes you've had to budget out for it, and other times you just decide to do it on a budget. And so there's a lot of logistics that go into
Mhm.
planning vacations. And like we've said, yeah, you can stay at the Westin Resort or you can stay at the Airbnb, that's attached to someone's house. It all depends on the experience you want.
Mhm.
When Tim and I were deciding to go visit Gulfport, Mississippi, we're like, we want to live like a local. So we're not going to be right on the beach. We're going to be a few blocks off the beach. But I want to be close enough that if I want to go take a walk on the beach every morning, I can go do that.
Mhm.
And what does that look like? So we're kind of approaching that as, we want to live like locals when we're doing that.
Mhm.
And so that also helps us to do it a little bit more on the cheap, right? To be able to stay in a VRBO that has a little kitchen, and we'll check out some restaurants and some of that, but we might just decide to do something easy one night, at
Mhm.
home, and maybe to be able to spend some more of that money doing something else that we would like
Yeah.
to explore when we're there. So I know there's a lot of ways to be crafty with what you do. Like a lot of people from campus will go to beaches in Texas or in Alabama with their families, and they will pack an entire gigantic cooler if they're driving that has a ton
Mhm.
of food that they've purchased here and prepped here, and they take it with them because the closer you get to the beach, the more expensive the groceries get. And so I
Mhm.
remember talking to you guys, we're like, why are we stopping an hour before we get to the Airbnb for groceries? I was never organized enough to get everything packed in a cooler, nor did we have room in the car by the time we piled all
Uh-huh.
of us in and all of our beach stuff. But we stopped because I knew that groceries were cheaper on the mainland than they were going to
Hmm.
be on the beach. And so that was just one way that I saved money for us.
Yeah.
We bought our own beach umbrella the first time we went down for a beach vacation, rather than renting the one beach umbrella and the two chairs that they're renting out for $60 a day, right? We bought some little $12.99 chairs, and you guys had your beach towels, and we had our umbrella, and we had our sand stuff. So like there's ways, buy some snorkel equipment if you're going to go
Hmm.
multiple times, or one set of snorkel equipment that your kids can share, things like that, ways that you can save money. I know, Kate, you have found luck as well as I have on VRBO and Airbnb, and pricing
Hmm.
seems to be significantly cheaper a lot of times
Yeah.
than some of the hotels.
Hmm.
They're not always perfect, but neither are the hotels. And so
Yeah.
you run into that both ways. You've had good luck as a young person being able to rent a car, which a lot of people are like, how is he
Hmm.
traveling by himself? He can't rent a car until he's 25. He can't rent a hotel until he's 21.
Hmm.
That's not true. How did you handle those
Yeah.
blocks, those?
So, like you said, on the rental car thing, there's this app called Turo, which allows people to rent out either their own cars, or some people buy cars specifically to rent them out on Turo. And if you're under 25, you can pay a young driver's fee. It's pretty cheap. I want to say it's like $75, something around there for your whole trip. And even just their rental car prices, if you're over 25, are typically cheaper than like an Enterprise or something like that. And what I like about Turo too is it allows you to pick your car. I know a lot of rental car places, you just put, I want an SUV, and they'll give you a random SUV, or I want a car, and they'll just give you a random car. But Turo allows you to go in and actually pick the car. So if, you're maybe taking a trip to Colorado and you want to be up in the mountains, you could get a Jeep, or you could get a Toyota 4Runner, something like that. Or if you're taking a trip on the California coast, you could get a little convertible Mustang and drive around. So I really love that app. So I would recommend that to anyone. It's a great app to be able to get a rental car, whether you're young or whether you're of age. I think it works great. You can set it to have the car dropped off at the airport, just like a normal rental car. It's been great. And like you said, with Airbnb, I've stayed in an Airbnb every trip I've taken. Yes, do you miss out on some of the typical hotel things, like, the free breakfast or maid service or things like that? Yes. But it all just depends on what you want. I'm the kind of person, if I'm on a trip, I'm not really at the place I'm staying at ever. I'll shower first thing in the morning, maybe eat breakfast there, and then I'm usually gone all day until after dinner, and I come home, shower, and go to bed. So to me, I don't want a place that has, bed bugs or roaches or anything like that. But I also don't need to stay in the nicest hotel that has, these fancy perks and stuff like that I'm just not going to be using. So yeah, I've had good luck on that. I know Airbnb, they don't charge any extra like young renter fees. It's just the normal price. And per night, it's usually cheaper. Again, it depends on what you get. I've stayed in some Airbnbs that are like little attached apartments to people's houses. I've stayed in one that's just its own apartment. I've stayed in houses. I've kind of done it all, and I've had a good experience with all of it. And I think all of that to say, you can definitely budget for your trip and spend your money how you would like. If you're the kind of person where you do like to be at, the place you're staying at very often, maybe do splurge and get a nice hotel. But then maybe in that case, look to maybe cook more at, your Airbnb or your hotel, and to save money, or to try to travel on, days of the week where flights might be a little bit
Mm-hmm.
cheaper, things like that. So I think it's important to kind of recognize what's important to you. If you're someone that likes to do activities and likes to go out to eat and see the place you're, going, then you don't need to spend all your money on a hotel. So I think that's just important to recognize what's important to you and where you want your money to be spent, if you're already kind of tight on that.
And yeah, make it affordable for yourself, right? Make it fit in with what you've got. I think we've become good at that because we had to, right? So if we wanted to take the trips, we weren't willing to sacrifice taking the trips
Uh-huh.
for quote unquote not having any money. We found ways to make it work. We also
Uh-huh.
got really good about piggybacking time off with holidays, but looking at things in a different way. So for instance, Tim and I are going out to see Sawyer over Labor Day weekend out in Washington. And we could have said, we want to fly on Friday and come back on Monday or Tuesday. Well, if you look at the flights for that looks ridiculous. So instead, we're going out Saturday morning and coming back on Wednesday. And so it'll
Mm-hmm.
take Tuesday off instead of Friday. And it ends up a third of the price, right, of what the tickets would have been. But we're piggybacking time off with holidays. So we've gotten good at that. We've gotten really good at figuring out ways to cover care for our pets and our plants. And Cade does a lot of dog sitting for other people as they travel. We
Mm-hmm.
have this new puppy, so we actually have a dog sitter coming in to stay at our house when we all go to Minnesota for a family graduation. So, if you are creative about how you do things, now if Cade travels, he makes sure we're going to be home so we can take care
Mm-hmm.
of the beagles. And if we're going to be gone, we just make sure we're not gone at the same time very often. But we all happen to be going to Minnesota at the same time. So usually we're watching each other's dogs, but there's creative ways that you can do that. We've had good luck with a service that will come in, like even if you're taking a day trip, they'll come in a time or two a day and play with your dogs, feed them, let them out, do that kind of thing. And also packing light is one of the things that we have tried to do a lot. We've gotten good at packing for at least a week in a carry-on. And so being able to layer things and being able to sometimes even take a little thing of laundry detergent with you and wash things out in the sink. Or a lot of times VRBOs or Airbnbs have laundry facilities in the
Mm-hmm.
unit. And a lot of times they even have the soap there. So there's ways you can pack light. The older Tim and I get, the more we're like, we're just going to check the luggage. We want our trip to be enjoyable and we don't want to be carting this around. So I would love to get to the point where I have my little purse and my book, and that's all I'm getting on the plane with. But I'd have to get a bigger suitcase to make that happen typically. So, but one of the last things I'd like to talk about really is kind of capturing the memories. So making sure that you are taking a lot of pictures. It is hard for us to recall specifics about things unless they're triggered by something. So
Mm-hmm.
when I see my Facebook memories come up and all of these trips Cade and I have talked to you about, there are pictures in my phone that pop up on Facebook memories. They're also in my phone, but a lot harder to find that way than if they just pop up every year in Facebook memories. And I can
Mm-hmm.
remember Cade crashing out in the back of the car on the way home from Branson at his trip at 10 because he had so much fun. He was just wiped out and he slept the entire way. And when I see that picture, it brings back all kinds of joy for me. Or I see them
Mm-hmm.
laying like turtles in the sand the first time we went to the beach, and his sister raising her head and going, oh, I just love it at the beach. Like, those things are all triggered because of the pictures. So make sure you're capturing the
Yeah.
memories. And when you're doing that, if you're the mom, I know sometimes this happens to dads, but very, very often it happens to moms. They get home and they are in none of the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So hand the phone to someone else. Let them take pictures of you with your kids. I don't care what you look like in your swimming suit. I don't care, if you think your hair is looking funny. Your kids are always going to want that picture down the road. So please make sure that you have someone else take the
For
pictures.
sure.
And it's not all selfies even, right? Like you can ask
Mm-hmm.
strangers to
Exactly. Yeah, I was
picture.
just about to say that on all of my trips, I have been on both ends of it. I've asked people to take pictures of me and my friends or whatever while we're on trips, and people have come up to me and asked me to take pictures of them. And so I think it's just important that, like you said, to make sure that everyone's included in the pictures, make sure they're not all selfies. Take pictures of each other, take pictures of the things you're doing, take videos, take note if someone said something funny, just to kind of have those memories to look back on. Kind of like you said, I know when I get those 1 year ago today memories or 3 years ago today, it just, it causes you to think about it. You have the actual pictures, actual videos to look at. So I think that that's just really important. And I know some people like to post on Facebook, some people like to journal, some people just take the pictures and leave them in their phone camera roll, or some people like to take Polaroid pictures, or whatever your specific method is of how you like to keep memories. I think it's just important to do that, and nice to look back to. I have a list in my phone of everywhere I've gone and like the restaurants I've gone to, the things I've done, things like that. So either if I'm going back, I can think, oh, I tried this restaurant and it looked good, but it really wasn't, or oh, I really liked this restaurant or this activity. And same with people asking you about places you've gone. Oh, have you ever been to Oh, yeah, I've been there. Here's what I would recommend. So I think that's just important to capture the memories, capture the things you've done, and just have those to look back on.
See, I learned something right here. I need to start a list on my phone. I haven't done that. And I do run into that where I'm like, oh, yeah, I tried this restaurant and I can like picture it in my head, but can I tell you what it's called? No. So I
No.
need to start making a list in my
Exactly. Yep,
phone.
I've got a list.
Yeah. So where are you going to travel next, Cade? Just I know you have to return to work here shortly. So, and what's your biggest dream vacation?
For sure. Where am I not traveling to next? That's the real question.
You have a busy rest of the year with travel.
Exactly. Coming up this weekend, actually, I'm going to San Diego by myself for 4 or 5 days, just to see it, enjoy it, spend some time at the beach. And I think that's another thing too. There doesn't need to be a reason for the trip. It doesn't need to be, oh, it's my birthday, or oh, I got a promotion or whatever. Sometimes it's okay just to go, So yes, going to San Diego coming up. I've got a trip to Minnesota coming up, like you said, for a family member's graduation. I'm going to Branson with some friends. I'm going to see my brother in Vancouver, Washington. I'm going to see my best friend in New York City this summer. I'm going on a cruise to Mexico and Central America. I've got a whole bunch lined up. So I know that that's a little more than the average person. But like my mom said, I've done a good job and learned from her of how to, maximize your PTO at work and how to maximize, traveling on a budget. And I would say my dream vacation, I definitely want to go to either Thailand or Bali. Both of those are those are, I would say, my biggest vacation dreams that I'll get to one day. But what about you, Mom? What do you have coming up? What's your goals? All that stuff.
Vacation bucket list.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so we will be going to check out a beach in Gulf Shores. We'll be going to Minnesota. We will be going to see Sawyer, and then we'll probably see another beach yet at the end of the year. Our goal is to check out 2 a year for the next few years to figure out where we want to land. And my biggest dream vacation, you see those little bungalows out over the ocean, and like you are surrounded by ocean, and you can walk down some steps to get into the clear water, right? And the ocean's kind of shallow there, but that I want to go spend a week there. And maybe nobody even wants to go with me. I can go by myself. I'm like you, I am perfectly happy being by myself. That actually sounds very, very blissful. I am a people person, but if you know me, you also know that being around a lot of people exhausts me. And so I recharge my batteries by being by myself. And so somebody can go with me if they'd like, but we will go in and we will do some things, but we will also be spending a lot of time just absorbing the aura that is the ocean. So that's my dream trip. So anything you think we've left out, Cade?
I don't think necessarily we've left it out, but just to reiterate, vacation and travel in general looks different for everyone. Everyone likes to do different things, go different places. Some people like the beach, some people like the mountain, some people like the city. So I think it's just really important to figure out what you like, what you and your family like, what works for you guys, whether you want to take just maybe 1-2 week long trip in the summer every year and drive around to a whole bunch of cities, or if you want to take 6 long weekends every year and go to a different place each time. I think it's just important to know that you got to find what works for you, your budget, your situation, and everything, and just enjoy it in whatever capacity that looks like. What about you, Mom? Is there anything else you would like to throw in?
Yeah, I think, since the name of this podcast is Raising Bigs, I think one of the things I'd like to throw in there is when you are going to visit your kids where they live, if they live away from you, be sure to do some of their favorite things, but also take them to do some new things. I've been out, I think 5 or 6 times now to Washington to see your brother. But if anybody has seen my Facebook posts, like, how much fun we have out there, and we're trying different things and we're trying some favorite things. And it, as I picture down the road where maybe all 3 of you are living in different cities, like how much fun that will be for me to come and discover where you live. And that is a vacation. When you're doing those kinds of things and be able to just enjoy them in their space. So for parents whose kids are growing up and moving away, if you guys can make that work, I would highly encourage you to visit them in their space. Don't just wait for them to come home.
For sure.
So this is just such an interesting one to talk to your young adults about. So listen to their dreams and really encourage them to make it happen. You can kind of see how Cade lights up when he talks about travel. If your kid wants to travel, encourage them to try. Whether that's with friends, whether that's with you, whether that's by themselves, like they can learn a lot in any of those situations. So the only trips I have ever regretted are trips not taken. So I am making up for that in this chapter of my life. For the last, 5-10 years, I've been traveling a lot. So don't wait. None of us know how long we have to create those memories. So if you've got it on your heart to take a trip, figure out a way to make it happen, even if it means you got to get a part-time job for a couple months to pay for that. It's worth it. So regular life is such a huge part of family reality, and it's really easy to get stuck in that. But how you choose to prioritize your time kind of away from that hustle and grind, which I don't really believe in any longer. I don't think that should be a thing for anybody. But whether it's a quick staycation weekend where you're doing free things in your city, which we kind of talked about, or a week away at the beach, or a month in another country, like all of those things sound amazing. But find a fit for your family and the time to truly just be together and unplug, or to be absolutely alone and recharge. So any parting words, Cade?
Like you said, I think the only trips that anyone has ever regretted is trips not taken. And understanding that you might go somewhere and say, okay, this isn't the best for me, but I still had a blast and still enjoyed it. I think it's just important to take take yourself out of your normal everyday routine, experience a new culture, try new restaurants, drive new streets, just things like that in whatever capacity that looks like for you. I think it's very important. And I know, like you said, how much I light up about it, how much you light up about it. It really is a great experience that I think everyone should get to enjoy in this lifetime. But with that being said, that is a wrap for this episode of Raising Bigs. Thank you guys all for listening today as we talked about one of my personal favorite topics, trips and traveling.
So we hope you found some takeaways and maybe a fresh perspective in this episode. Parents and young adults can share a ton of joy engaging with each other around enjoyable endeavors that they take either together or sharing them that they've taken alone. Again, we're not experts, but we can authentically share what we're learning in hopes of making the path a little more joy-filled for those of you who are listening. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please, please, please subscribe, share with those in your circle who might benefit from hearing it. A new episode is going to come out every Monday. You can visit my life coach website at marcyhawkinson.com or email me at lifecoachmarcy@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook at Life Coach Marcy and on Insta at life_coach_Marcy. Cade, where can our listeners find you?
They can find me across all platforms at the Cade Berrigan, just the first last name Cade Berrigan. That's everything: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of that. The best way to contact us, give us any feedback, anything you guys want us to talk about, if you need advice on anything, is to DM us on our social medias, either myself or my mom, or reach out through the contact me page on my mom's website. Again, that is marcyhawkinson.com, or email her at lifecoachmarcy@gmail.com. We appreciate any feedback, topic ideas, responses, anything you guys would like to share with us. But with that being said, we'll see you guys next time on the next episode of Raising Bigs.
Bye, Cade.
Bye, Mom.